come out of this home. Are you ready now, my brother?
Why are you calling me brother? Who the hell are you?
I'm you. I'm your shadow.
What?
Ask the father that you killed. I'll send you to hell to meet him.
This evening we are going to be ranting about Metal Gear Solid as the new HD collection has just been released. I'm joined by my great friend Ben, who is the first time contributor to the podcast, but get used to it because you'll be seeing plenty of him should I pull the finger out and actually make more fucking podcasts. But yeah, anyway, Ben.
Hello, PJ. How was the crack?
Septic.
That was a wonderful introduction.
Sound. We've spent the last half an hour trying to get this thing up and going because this is actually the first time I've...
Well, you've been getting up and going. I've been sitting back watching you.
Solidarity, man. I've never had to set up two mics in the same room before because any other podcasts I've done with Ducky or Dara, they've had their own setup in their own gaff and it's just all been done online.
It's a very professional setup here.
Unbelievable.
My God.
If there was a video component to this podcast, you would see Joe Rogan doesn't have this setup.
There's envy, boy. He'll turn blushing red looking at this fucking setup.
Yeah, absolutely. Money can't buy you some things, and it certainly can't buy you a setup like this one.
No.
Because, money I do not have. But hopefully that'll change after the fucking success that this is inevitably going to be. But anyway, Metal Gear, anyone who's even somewhat familiar with my channel has probably seen little references to Metal Gear here, there, and everywhere. That's my biggest influence, I would say. That started me on the road of kind of thinking about things. As a kid in 1998, I would have been, 10? 10 when the first Metal Gear came out.
You're above.
And say, up until that point, video games, they were fairly rudimentary in terms of like, okay, here's a little task there. It might be a little side-scroller, be it Streets of Rage or Sonic the Hedgehog. You go and you defeat the bad lad because the bad lad is bad. But Metal Gear was the first kind of cinematic game where the characters had proper depth.
Man, Jesus.
Yeah.
You see, now, because you played it when it like practically first came out. I was a very, very late bloomer.
Yes. I remember myself and Ben, we used to work together in retail, no less.
Wonderful experience if you've ever been there. It's definitely highly recommended if you're looking for a mental breakdown, lose all faith in humanity.
Yeah.
Just general turn over the wrist kind of job. And
there's no better way to catalyze suicidal depression other than, working in retail for a spell. Yeah, we used to work in a franchise known as CEX or Sex, as I think they like to call themselves, but nobody actually refers them to that because it's unbelievably juvenile, and I don't know how anyone...
It was hilarious. Never.
I don't know how anyone ever signed off on that, but anyway, I think we first crossed paths back in 2018, I believe.
By Christ, yeah.
Yep.
The thing is, you worked there before I did. Then I kind of joined on a bit later, and then you came back. And it was the kind of whole kind of male thing of just like, here's this lad, and here's this lad. And of course, what inevitably broke the ice then was a Father Ted reference. It was the field episode. We were talking about the field, and I just went, "Keep your hands on the side."
Keep your hands on the sides.
And I just watched the register. You turn around, and just burst out laughing, and boom, male friendship.
Simple as.
What's a surname? We don't need that. How many siblings do you have? Nah.
Fuck that. You like Father Ted? We'll get on.
There you go.
But at risk of derailing this entire thing and going into a Father Ted thing, but we said, seeing as the Metal Gear has had they've just released a new HD collection and it is a piss poor effort by all accounts. I haven't bought it because all of the reviews are slating the bloody thing. Like, there's no quality of life improvements that have been made to it, and it's proper disappointing because up until now, like, say, if you were a PlayStation gamer, you were basically locked out of the Metal Gear franchise. If you have, like, an Xbox console, you had the backwards compatibility. So you could play the HD collection from 2011 that has 2, 3, and Peace Walker on it. But the latest collection has now got Metal Gear, the original Metal Gear Solid, and in my humble opinion, the best one.
I would agree with you on that one. It hits this mark on every cylinder. Just perfect, in my fucking opinion. As for the HD collection, that's actually where I started, the Xbox one. So I think I started with the third one. I was like, oh look, I've never played the series. I'm in a unique position to kind of play canonically.
Yeah,
and then I finished the third one and went, okay, I've made a big mistake here. I shouldn't have done that.
This is it. Like, once we first crossed paths, you hadn't played any of the Metal Gears.
No, none of them.
And
the thing is, I never played them, but like, you know, just how influential they are over the years. The soundtrack, the characters, all that, like, it dipped into you no matter what.
That's it. Like, you know, once we were first getting to know each other in CX or sex, whatever you want to call it.
Shite.
Yeah. Say, once you told me that you hadn't played those, I took massive umbrage to it because you were a gamer. Like, you played games, and I was like, what? What in the fuck do you mean you haven't played those things?
Yeah.
And I think then I set you the task of going away and playing them. And I remember back in my old gaff, I think, did we have to do some kind of a setup? I can't quite remember now, but did I emulate the first game on
You
PC?
did, yeah. So, like, the thing is, I played the third one to begin with, because I saw in the menu it said it started in, like, the Cold War. So I was like, oh, I'll just play, like, you know, canonically like that. And then I finished it, and I was like, okay, clearly I shouldn't have done that. That's not how this game is supposed to be played. So we booted around your gaff, fired up the first one, and then from there, that was the first time I ever played that game. And,
yeah.
like, you have to play kind of a passenger watching someone else experience it for the first time. So that's a sort of like a unique perspective for you.
Well, funny you say that, because actually my first experience of Metal Gear in 1998 was like, there was older cousins of mine that I was brought up with, basically, and they got that game. Up until that point, I was happy enough with Crash Bandicoot and all the rest. But my first experience of it was actually watching it being played through. I had no interest in actually playing it because it's such a cinematic kind of thing. I was just totally invested in the characters.
Oh, you could absolutely just sit back and watch it. Like, Jesus, It's magnificent.
That's it. So my first experience of it was just sitting there and watching my older cousin play it. And I haunted the gaff for the couple of days it took him to finish it. And yeah, absolutely fantastic. I went away, and at the time, you know, in the 90s, Ireland being fucking absolutely a broke young fella, and best of luck trying to convince the mother to give me fucking 50 quid or 40 quid or whatever a PS1 game cost at the time. But I rented the game a bunch of times, and I remember hitting the first snag when it was basically, because anyone that's familiar with the first game knows that, like, early on in the game, you have to call a character in the codec, which is, you know, the whole kind of the system where you call other characters, because there's a part in the first game everyone knows where you basically need to call this other character to progress the story. And the whole thing was you have to look on the back of the CD case, is what they say. But it was kind of poorly worded, because in the game, you've just gotten this optical disc from a character. So I kept on equipping it in the menu, kind of going, okay, where the fuck is this codec frequency? I can't find it. What you're actually meant to do is look on the back of the box and read the codec frequency. Go, oh, look, it's 140.15. I think it's Merrill's frequency. But I didn't have that because it was a rented game. So I remember being a young fella and actually having to painstakingly go through it. Okay, try this one, until it eventually worked. So there was a couple of hours worth of sitting there, trial and error, trying to fucking get Merrill's frequency to go through.
God almighty.
And eventually then I was like, oh, hey, there we go, fucking got it going. Yeah, the first Metal Gear game, it was the first game that was cinematic and had proper characters and properly atmospheric kind of...
See, like I said there now, it hits its mark in every cylinder. Soundtrack, like you said the lads who made Silent Hill made that or something like that?
Yeah, Konami, who are by all accounts a shower of bastards. And the latest collection, the Metal Gear Master Collection, as they're calling it, reflects that, because it's a piss poor attempt at a port of...
It's essentially trying to capitalize on its own IP, like, but failing to do so miserably.
Well, with the smallest amount of effort, they could have, you know, had a good bash off it and made it, like, you know, they call it the Master Collection, but the reality of it is, like, those games... You can, if you have an Xbox console, even like an Xbox One, not even necessarily a Series X or Series S or anything like that, but you can lash in the old HD collection from 2011, play it in better quality than what's available right now, what they've just put out. Because by all accounts, now I haven't bought it because fuck that, I'm not paying, like... See, I wouldn't have mind paying money for the collection had they put in some bit of effort. They've ported it to all modern consoles, and the Switch is underpowered, fair enough, but it still has more than enough processing power to be able to run those games at like 60 frames a second. These are like 20-year plus old games.
Oh, there's no excuse for it at this stage, like, none.
Yeah. So you've got this piss poor port on the Switch, and it runs like shite, basically. It's a blatant cash grab. They put absolutely no effort into it at all, and it's a bit of a sickener, really, because the name of it, the Master Collection Volume 1, implies there's going to be, you know, a Volume 2, and everyone is hypothesizing that they're going to release, you know, the second one, the name implies it anyway, where they're going to have, say...
Peace Walker?
Yeah, Peace Walker, Metal Gear Solid 4... and 5, presumably. Who knows? Maybe there was other obscure ones like Metal Gear Acid. They were kind of card games that were released in the PSP and all that lark. In my opinion, say the gold standard are the first 3 games. Those are the ones I would rate. The fourth one onwards, I think, are a bit shite. But the first 3 games...
We will get to that. The fourth one now I take... Oh my goodness. When we get to the fourth one, I got a lot to say about that. Jesus almighty.
That's it, because I remember, like, as part of our Metal Gear marathon, I rooted out an old PS3 and a copy of Metal Gear 4, because I was like, look, we have to go through them, whatever you think about them, whatever you like, whatever you don't, we're going to go through the whole fucking lot. And we played through 4 as well. I watched you play through 4, because I'd done it before.
Well, to be fair, I kind of watched most of it as well. Well, my God almighty.
It's not really a game, 4. It's an interactive movie, because, like, look, all the Metal Gear games...
No, like, even the first one now had its share of, like, cutscenes. But, like, they were so enjoyable enough to watch that it was actually, like, engaging enough gameplay to look forward to then afterwards. The fourth one then was just... Look, we will get to that. What we're going to do now, I'd say, just to kind of balance it out, is we're going to start from the beginning, give our opinion maybe on each kind of game as we move along towards the end of it.
Yeah, okay, so we'll start at the start with, like, okay, the first Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah.
Although it's technically not the first Metal Gear game, as there was 2 Metal Gear games preceding that. They're also on the HD collection. They're also on the 2011 release as well. But they were originally released on the MSX, I believe, a console I've never owned, never set eyes on physically. But, yeah, from way back in the day. But... I played through some of those games. I've never actually completed them because they're wicked old games, and they're very, very rudimentary, very bare bones type of thing. But in fairness now, the first game references them. I
do appreciate that he didn't just kind of dump it. You know, like he went into the PS1 era, new graphics and so forth. He was like, no, Metal Gear is my baby. We're moving on from there narratively. We're building off of that.
Yeah.
So, like, you're not entirely lost, even if you start with Metal Gear Solid. It gives you enough information to work off of to kind of, you know what's going on, some of the key figures and so forth and all that.
Yeah, like, I know loads of fans of Metal Gear Solid, and I don't know of anyone who actually played those older games, but they're referenced enough in Metal Gear Solid that you know enough that you need to know from those references. You know that Snake has done this dance before with these bipedal tanks that can launch nuclear weapons from any surface on the face of the planet. And he came out on top, and he had a commanding officer called Big Boss, who turned out to be his father, which was actually something that wasn't actually referenced. That was something that they kind of retconned into it after the fact. It's actually something that's referenced in the cutscenes. It's like, oh yeah, he turned out to be my father, blah, blah, blah. That's not actually something that was mentioned, good, bad, or indifferent, in the old games. But in any case...
just to put a footnote as well, dear listener, there's going to be major spoilers ahead. We're talking about the Metal Gear series, so if you haven't played it, go away. Come back after you experience it. And barrel on there now. So
yeah, it begs the question, if you've never played a Metal Gear game, what in the fuck are you doing listening to this podcast? I mean, go away and play Metal Gear, for Christ's sake.
Listen, I've been there. It's not a great spot at all.
Yeah,
I've been berated.
But if you're going to play them, maybe don't buy the Master Collection. If you don't have any other means of playing them, I mean, I'm sure they're fine. So like that's
not even experience the first time HD, no?
Well, I'm seeing a lot of discourse around the HD collection, and a lot of people are kind of saying, well, look, if this is your only access to it, if you don't have, if you're a younger person and you're going into these games and you don't have the old hardware, it's perfectly fine. If this is your only means of playing it, flog away. But if you have a PC and you're some way PC proficient and you can set up an emulator, it's probably the best way to do it. Like, this is the thing with this HD collection. They put in no effort whatsoever into it, but like on any basic emulator, you can make these things run on a PC now, you know, current day, with like 4K resolution, 60 frames a second, whereas by all accounts this new HD collection, they're struggling to knock 1080p out of it, which by today's standards and modern hardware is just a bit pathetic. I
mean, you have to give them a bit of a break. They are a AAA company, like, you know. They haven't the funds to do that, you know.
Well, this is the thing. Say, there's been a lot of bad press surrounding Konami in like the last few years.
Well deserved.
Yeah, like they essentially, back in 2015 when they were releasing the Phantom Pain, there was a whole discourse around like, okay, look, they want to get out of the AAA game market because they're too expensive to produce and they're taking a massive risk. And, you know, once you're dealing with like an author fucking creator like Hideo Kojima, he wanted to spend...
We'll cover him there, listeners.
Yeah, we're going to get into that, and there might be some...
I will say as well, because like you grew up with the series.
Yeah.
You kind of based your opinion around him as you grew up, and there was a massive cult of personality around him. For me, I wasn't really into the series, like I said, so I didn't really know about him and such. So I was kind of influenced by you, and I could see certainly your points as we went along the series from my kind of unbiased view.
That's it. Like, say, I'm a big believer in separating the art from the artist, and that is something that I have had to do with the Metal Gear franchise. It's something that, like, say, everyone kind of associates the franchise with Hideo Kojima. That's kind of problematic because, say, when... And look, I'll hold my hand up to say this. It's very difficult when the entire world is screaming at you going, we love the taste of your piss. It's very difficult for a human ego not to, you know, respond kind of going, well, Jesus, I just piss excellence. And
see, this is the thing now when we get to Metal Gear 4. This is the issues I took with it, right?
Yeah, that's
when we get to that.
But we have a long road ahead of us until we get to that stage.
There's plenty to say about that, man.
Yeah, we're probably going to have to break this into multiple podcasts, so we'll try and stick to what's on the Master Collection, because, look, we could probably get a fucking series of podcasts out of this. I've been threatening for a long, long time to do a bunch of podcasts about Metal Gear, so this is probably the first of many. We'll start at the start as far as most people are concerned, because like I said, I don't think many people have played the original Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake on the MSX.
Yeah, like it's there on the HD collection. I played it for like a couple of minutes, but it's just too dated for me.
Yeah, it's very bare bones, and from what I know about Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, which is the second game in the franchise on the MSX, there is a lot of stuff in that they fleshed out and they more or less repeated with Metal Gear. Stuff like, say, the remote controlled missile and all those kind of things. Structurally, the game kind of follows a very similar pattern. But in any case, we're not going to give too much focus on them because they're bare bones insofar as narrative and character is concerned. You know, there is character in them, and they're, you know, you get Snake as this grizzled kind of at that stage, you know, in the chronology, he's a younger soldier and he's kind of a bit green, and X, Y, and Z happens. And then by the time we get to the start of Metal Gear, he's a retired hermit. He's gone off to Alaska. He's a musher, I believe, is the term they use in the game. Basically means he keeps sled dogs, huskies, that kind of thing. And he's just gone off to Alaska for solitude because, you know, he's he's seen some shit and now he just wants to escape and fuck off and do his thing in solitude. And Christ, I that's a setup I just adore immediately. Like some guy who's like, I've seen too much, I want to walk away. Because Christ knows, I think that's something that most people can relate to. Just the desire to fuck off and be by oneself and hang out with a bunch of dogs.
Yeah.
So
I want to be alone, but not feel lonely. I get the dogs.
Yeah, that's it. But so at the start of this game, Solid Snake is called back out of retirement to basically to do one last mission by his old comrade, Colonel Roy Campbell, because what has happened is a terrorist group, formerly a special ops unit, the Foxhound Special Operations Unit, have gone rogue and they have hijacked a nuclear weapon in an Alaskan base on the Fox Archipelago, I believe. Shadow Moses Island is the setting. Mm-hmm. And you're tasked with infiltrating said fortress, taking out the terrorists. Or sorry, no, I'm jumping the gun a small bit. What your initial thing is that you have to rescue 2 high-value VIP hostages.
DARPA chief?
Donald Anderson, the DARPA chief, and Kenneth Baker, the Arms Tech president. Arms Tech are like some military group that develop next generation special weapons and so on and so forth. And you're basically, ascertain whether the terrorists have an ability to launch a nuclear weapon. So this special ops unit that you're going up against, they've got all manner of like special abilities. Like one guy has got psychic powers, Psycho Mantis, who's probably the most iconic boss fight character in video game history. This is where we get back to the meta fourth wall breaking thing. There's a whole...
It loves that, yeah. Yeah,
there's a whole thing about, look, if you have any Konami games saved on your memory card back then, and at the time, I didn't. I just, I had Crash Bandicoot and stuff on the memory card. So basically when you enter this scene, it's like, your memory is completely clean. So that was lost on me. But he did all these things, like if you had the DualShock controller, which I also didn't. I had I had just the normal controller that didn't have the analog sticks. But if you had the analog one with the vibration function, he told you to put it down on the ground. He's like, I'm going to move it with my mind alone. And, this is all fourth wall breaking stuff that...
Oh, yeah, absolutely, man. I can only imagine like how that must have felt years ago.
Yeah, it hadn't been seen before or since. So, it was fairly fucking class back then. Like, I remember playing with someone else who had the DualShock controller and who had also had Castlevania on their memory card. It's like, oh, holy shit. And when you're 10 years of age and, you're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, you don't know anything. It was like, how is he fucking doing that? It was, so there was something very special about, say, when technology was in its infancy and you were of that age where there was still some magic in the world because you were still young and the world was new and anything was possible. And you're seeing all this shit coming at you. It's like, holy crap. But as well as that, like, the game was like the first properly cinematic game where you had long cutscenes and stuff. Lots of people gave out about that, but that was something that
I thought it was brilliant when the first time I played it. The thing is, we did the what was it? The introduction sort of cutscenes, sort of side thing where Snake is being debriefed by Campbell. Naomi.
Yes, that was something that I insisted.
You're like, all right, we're going to fire up this series now. Let's give it a blast. And I was like, yeah, sure. And you're like, hang on.
Yeah.
Before we start, do you want to watch these?
Yes.
Yes.
There's a briefing option. And basically, before you ever start the game...
But it also shows a very particular, what would you say, plot point Naomi does in the debriefing that comes into play.
That's it. Like, it gives added context. Look, you could get by without watching it, and basically characters will reference stuff, and you just basically go along with it. But it's nice to...
Get invested, immersed, all that kind of stuff. Huh?
That's it. But it was so unprecedented at the time. Whereas, like, up until that point, all you were given in any video game was, like, a bare bones kind of a story. Here's a bad lad. Like, say, Mario, for instance. Bowser has kidnapped Princess Peach. And you have to fucking get her back because that's your rudimentary objective. Now, play the game. And nobody really gave a shit as such. But Now there's like proper stakes involved, and like, you know, it's kind of okay. No, look, these terrorists, they have a nuclear weapon, and they're gonna launch this nuke if their demands aren't met. And this is where it calls back to the original games on the MSX. They say like the terrorist demands, or they want like a bunch of money, and they want the remains of Big Boss. Big Boss was the antagonist from the original 2 games, but they're looking for his remains now, and you don't know why. They're basically like, up until that point, there's a big question mark as to why would they want this man's remains. And as you go on, that's made clear.
I think it does a good job putting you in the feet of Snake. Like, you're just kind of dropped in, he kind of agrees to it. And as the story begins to unravel, the mystery, you know, begins to do so as well. And like, everything that seems so straightforward, get in, you know, beat the bad guys, get out. But it's not as straightforward as that. The people who you think are on your side begin to kind of turn against you as well in some sense.
Yeah, the twists and turns, like, and especially like if you can imagine this from my perspective and the perspective of a great many people who played it fresh back then, like a 10-year-old, and you've got all this, you know, I suppose the clue is in the name, tactical espionage action, but you've got all this kind of shit. For me, I'd experienced nothing like it, and all the twists and turns and the betrayals and the kind of the fuckery that's going on behind the scenes, because Snake is constantly questioning his orders, and say the 2 high-profile targets that you were sent in to save initially, they both die of a heart attack, and it's like, that's a bit coincidental, is it not? Snake starts questioning his commander, basically, fucking Colonel Campbell, and he's like, okay, what the fuck is going on here, buddy? You're clearly not telling me something. Like, there's no way these 2 lads that I was sent in to save just died of a heart attack. That's a bit too coincidental for me. And you have... Never before in a game did I have a character that was questioning his own motive for what he's doing. And it's basically like, well, look, you're in it now, Snake. You're here in Alaska. You have to basically do this job. Basically the world is going to be engulfed in nuclear conflict if you don't play ball. You know that I'm probably lying to you, but you're not in a position to really do too much about it. So, you know, it was just like, for a young mind, so many questions, kind of juggling all this shit. It's like, fucking hell, I don't know what's going on. Like, you know, I just wanted to play a game where I sneak around and shoot the odd fella. But
that's what it draws a bit of a detective out of you as well, and like gets you to sort of question authority instead of just blindly kind of going along with it.
That's it. Like,
you know,
it's I credit the Metal Gear series with, say, starting me down a road. Now, this might be for better or worse, where like I've said before, like, I actually think people who are okay, to put a fine point in it, a bit thick are probably better off.
It's a nice way of putting it, but yes.
Yeah. Say, like, if you never question a damn thing in your life and you just kind of go along with things on surface level as kind of like, oh, look, sure, everything just is what it is, you'll probably have an easier time of it. But when you start questioning things, you know, that's when you get into existential crisis territory. And maybe Metal Gear has a lot to answer for in that respect, insofar as my development is concerned, at least. But it was a riveting experience nonetheless. But you've got all these characters then, say, like the head of the special, or the rogue special forces unit, Foxhound, Liquid Snake. This guy, you're told, you know, is kind of like, oh yeah, he looks identical to Snake. He's blondie, but he's got a British accent, but he bears a striking resemblance. He has the same code name, you know, apart from, you know, look, he's Liquid Snake, you're Solid Snake. So you've got these 2 diametrically opposed characters. All of a sudden, you've got this question mark as to, okay, this guy is looking for the remains of Big Boss, a character who you know to be your father. So it's already setting up this archetypical kind of a thing. You've got the hostile brothers. It's like the Cain and Abel story, to get somewhat biblical on it, where you've got these like 2 guys who are essentially, it's highly implied that, okay, look, there has to be some connection between these 2 guys. They've got the same code name. They're both like unbelievable good soldiers. They both have some kind of an interest in Big Boss. They look identical, blah, blah, blah. Got all this intrigue straight out the gap. And a host of these other characters who are all on their own terms, extremely interesting. Like, you know, the first...
Something that it could have failed down the line, terms of Metal Gear 4, but we'll get to that. Like I said, eventually.
Look,
but like even like say philosophically and just standalone kind of characters, the bosses in the first one are you can still remember them. You still remember the boss fights. Still remember the motives. Like they're brilliant. Like.
Yeah, like one thing that the franchise is known for is like having like these incredibly interesting boss fights where like every time you cross paths with one of these members of the Special Forces unit, you'll get lengthy dialogue beforehand where you'll basically have the two characters kind of going, oh, well, fucking, you're the man with the same code name as the boss, and you're kind of getting drip fed more and more context as it goes on, and the universe is just getting fleshed out the more you progress in it. And for every question you have, you'll get 100 more questions in lieu of an answer. But the first game, it's a lovely little self-contained thing. This is kind of what I'm on about with creators being a victim of their own success, basically. Say, if you knock it out of the park to the extent that Hideo Kojima knocked it out of the park with the first Metal Gear, it's very hard to kind of come away from that success and be humble. So, like, he played very fast and loose going into the second game, and I'm jumping the gun here now, but...
I'll get to that, yeah.
Yeah, but say, when he was still a relatively unknown quantity back in 1998, you had a very self-contained kind of story, and it was grounded insofar as, like, there's something actually that I hear a lot of people kind of attribute to the Metal Gear franchise that kind of pisses me off a small bit, where they kind of go, oh, it's a bit zany, and it's a bit wacky, and it's a bit goofy. And that really pisses me off, because, like, the first game... Say, if you want to kind of look at any of it and kind of go, oh, well, it's a bit zany and it's a bit this and it's a bit that, I don't ever hear anyone apply that same kind of qualification to stuff like the Marvel movies, where they just kind of take them like, okay, look, the Marvel movies and all that, they've got this kind of silly premise where we have to accept that there's, Thor is here now, this Norse god, and there's a man in a metal suit that can fly around the place, and a super soldier from World War II who's been frozen in ice and all this stuff, and a man that turns into a big rage monster. But never...
just to summarise the Marvel universe there. But
but never does anyone kind of preface those kind of things with, oh, it's a bit silly and a bit zany. It's just, oh, it's its own thing. Like, the universe has its own parameters and has its own lore and its own whatnot.
Yeah.
But the first game definitely took itself very seriously. And the thing that I adore about the first game in particular is like the tone and the ambience of it.
Oh man, like just the Alaskan environment reflecting just the cold.
That's it.
It's just magnificent. That Irish song that plays at the start coming in the sub, that just melted me into the chair.
Oh yeah, the best is yet to come is the song that the game opens with and closes with, and it's sang by an Irish orchestra, if I'm not mistaken. Like, the song it's in Irish as far as I'm aware.
Oh yeah, it is, yeah.
It is, yeah. But say, like, that's a really kind of the game gives you this really somber tone. You're in this dark,
melancholy,
snowy,
man. Yeah, there you go.
That's it. And you've got this kind of a remorseful soldier who basically people think of as this hero who saved the world in the previous two Metal Gear games. And he's all the time basically stating, I'm not a hero, I'm just an old killer, basically. The only heroes I know are either dead or in prison. Like, you've got the main female lead of the game, like Meryl, and she's, if you look at the briefings at the start of it, you see like she's only 18 years of age, and she grew up in a military background. She's the commanding officer's, Roy Campbell, the niece of that character. And his motive for being involved in this operation, despite being retired, is that she was in this base when the terrorists took over. So she's being held as a hostage. So he was brought on board because of that. So part of your commanding officer's motive is, look, save my niece. But when you cross paths with her, she's like starstruck. She's like, oh my God, Solid Snake, you're this legendary hero. And he's very like, no, I'm not. I'm just a piece of shit. I'm just a fucking... I'm just a killer hired to do a job, and that's basically what I am. And she's like, no, I don't believe this. But he's also, and this is where like none of the characters are one-dimensional.
No, but see, even just that now, like the fact that she's his niece, it gives a dimension to the character Campbell, who could have, say, easily been just, oh, here's a fellow who's giving you your mission. He's the general, blah, 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 bland, bland. They give him depth, they give him emotion, you get invested in him.
Yeah, that's it. Like, I mean, it could very easily have just been like, okay, I am what's the word I'm looking for? I am an exposition machine where I'm just going to spout information. But he's got stakes in this entire thing too, and that's fleshed out as it goes on. And there's a very kind of a whole heartfelt thing that's involved with him and his niece as the game goes on. So basically, you've got Snake there having this interaction with this younger woman who thinks that he's the bee's knees, and he's like, no, I'm not. I'm a piece of shit, basically. But at the same time, he's also a bit of a fucking hound, where he's like, oh yeah, you got a great ass, by the way. So it's not all just, you know, somber sadness. It's all like, you know, there's a bit of crack to be had out of Snake too. He's like, you know, he's as cool as fuck. Like, he's telling you, like, look, I'm a piece of shit, but he's also out to have the crack. Like, he's, you know, very early in the game when you're talking to your support team on the Kodak, which is essentially like an in-game phone where you talk to your support characters. That's another thing that was just unheard of.
The amount of dialogue is ridiculous. I think especially for the third one, isn't it?
The second one has the most codec calls out of any of them, but like, say, just to keep on point with the first one, like, at any point in the game, you've got a bunch of different characters on this codec. Maybe you've got
Master Miller.
You've got Colonel Roy Campbell as your commanding officer, and through his codec, you also speak to Dr. Naomi Hunter, who is a specialist in gene therapy, because the army of soldiers that are basically patrolling around the place, they're next generation special forces, and basically they have been modified through gene therapy. So this woman is brought on board to basically be like, look, I'm an expert in what those soldiers are, and I'm here to give you support and tell you what you need to know about dealing with them. And she's got her own motives and her own stake. She's instrumental in the story, and that becomes apparent as it moves on. But like, even then, Snake is kind of like flirtatious with her, and there's another character then,
Master Miller.
Mailing, the Asian girl who is basically tasked with saving your game, and she does this great little thing. Like, anytime you save the game, she gives you like an old proverb, like, you know, oh, the graveyards are full of indispensable men, and all this kind of thing. So you've got these little kind of philosophical proverbs peppered throughout it every time you save the game, and you have these conversations at length. Like, and this is a PS1 game from 1998 where you're basically just fucking...
That's what blows my mind about all this. It's just ridiculous how much they put into this game. It could have just been like, press start, save game, turn it off.
Yeah, the amount of context.
They made a character out of saving your game.
Yeah, like, you can walk around different places on the map, and you can go into first person view and look at something and call another character in the codec, and they'll basically tell you more about basically a bit of equipment or something like that, or a tank, or if you're in a boss fight with any of the characters, with any of the boss characters, the call will basically be about, oh, Revolver Ocelot, and they'll tell you about that character, and they'll flesh out that character's backstory, so you get all this context and backstory for the characters as you're going along. It's all there if you want it. Like, you could, like, so yeah.
I think it's like there's plenty there as is, but there's some additional on top of it if you want it.
Yeah, and this is all in 1998. Like, there's modern games come out today, and they don't have even close to this level of, like, you know, detail and finesse.
But like, there's videos online where it shows an hour and 2 hours of like information and stuff he wanted to add that never made the final cut.
Yeah,
just weird small things, like he wanted to add like pet rats and stuff like that. Just like, oh, I just want him to have that. And oh, if you wanted information about something, there would have been this guy, a mariachi, who would have sung you songs. It never made the final cut. It's like, really now?
Yeah, why. Fair. Like, some things, you know, okay, are going to inevitably be left on the cutting room floor, but the fact that so much of this stuff got into the game at the time that it did, and, you know, so you've got all of this character work and all of this dialogue recorded for each of these characters that fleshed them out so fucking unbelievably well. Back in 1998, it is just absolutely mind-boggling that the game exists at all. Like, I can't gush about it enough. It is just absolutely tremendous. That first game is a flawless work of art. And I hear this crap nowadays. Some people kind of saying, oh, well, it's very dated and all this. It's like,
my arse.
Christ,
You got to be kidding me.
that's like going back and saying, like, you know, some of, oh, well, you know, 2001 A Space Odyssey is very dated and whatever. Actually, funny that I bring that up. There's two primary characters in the game. Snake's actual real name is David, and another very prominent character, Hal Emmerich Otacon, his first name Hal and Dave.
That's it.
That was a reference to 2001 Space Odyssey, because, you know, Hal was the computer in that, blah de blah. But, like, so, you know, you've got all these references to other, like, seminal works of art. You've got all these characters. You've got these archetypes. You know, you've got your hostile brothers. You've got all this mention of this tyrannical father figure who is dead. For some reason, they want the remains of him. All these, you know, class, like, boss characters that all have their own motives. This supporting crew of characters who also have their own motives, their own stake in this story. And it was just unheard of back then. Just the impact that game had on me personally. Just like, I could never do it justice, basically yammering on about it. But, like, that game, it kind of transcends its medium in that, like, there's movies, like, you know, I'm big into my movies. I'm big into like my movies and my books and my sci-fi and my philosophy and all that kind of stuff. But Metal Gear is where it all started for me, because up until then it was just rudimentary kind of, here's your task, save the princess, I know, get your high score in fucking Space Invaders or whatever the fuck it was. You know, like, video games were just that. They were rudimentary tasks, and never before was there anything like this. And yeah, I think it started me down a road of, like, thinking about things that maybe I would have been better off not going down. But
there's nothing more dangerous than a man stopping and asking the question, why?
Why? Indeed.
Why? Yeah, but, like,
why have the spuds gone black in the ground?
You got to experience it from a very young age.
Yeah.
Like, I came to it, Jesus, like 2-3 years ago as a full-grown adult. I managed to, like, fly under the radar for myself and never played any of them up to that point.
Yeah, I can't believe you missed out on that one. Like, how did you manage that?
I don't know, man. Like, I know, I've heard the music, I knew the characters.
Did you have a PS1?
Yes.
What the fuck were you playing?
I don't know. I don't remember. But, like when I experienced it now, even as a full-grown adult, it still blew me away. Just how magnificent it was. Just
yeah,
the melancholy, the tone, the PS1 graphics, the kind of Silent Hill-ish kind of looking thing, lends itself so brilliantly. Like, there's a scene when you're just about to meet Grey Fox. Do you remember that?
Yes,
and you come down the hallway and there's blood splattered and there's a small kind of, like, image blur as it comes down. I love that scene.
You see, that's it. Like, if you listen to, like,
but it's dated.
Yeah. When you listen to, like,
off.
the music and the ambience, you've got this cyborg ninja that's just showed up and it's just, like, you know, killed a bunch of people. The game,
You see, like, something like that, a cyborg ninja, I can see why someone might say it's zany or something, but even that is somehow still more grounded than most things.
that's such a disservice to it. Like, that's just such a, what is the word I'm looking for? Like, it's basically the same thing. Like, when you could talk about any modern media that way, but for some reason I don't hear people kind of reducing other forms of media, be it Marvel movies or whatever, to kind of just like, oh, isn't that a bit silly?
It could be just sort of like a sense of contrarianism. Here's a very popular IP. I'm going to distinguish myself by denigrating it. Like, the games, like, they have a laugh as well. Like, you know, it's not all fucking serious. Like, you've got, from the very first game, you've got the character in the background of Johnny, who will... Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. But look, back then, Johnny was actually funny.
Well, that's because he was, you know...
He was the comic relief
on
character.
screen.
Yeah. He was just this soldier that you never really crossed paths with in the background who had diarrhea, and you'd see him in the odd cutscene and he'd reference the fact that he had diarrhea, and you know, it was kind of like, haha, look, isn't that fair shit? Fucking your man there has diarrhea and all the rest. They went on to make him a primary character in Metal Gear Solid 4, which we will get to.
We will get to that.
We will get to that. But just staying on track with the first game.
Roll it back. Metal Gear 1.
Yeah, Metal Gear 1.
Yeah.
But back then, that was funny. So the game, you know, it had its laughs too. There's many a serious movie, like, say, I would say, like, compared to something like Terminator 2, that's a very serious movie with a lot of, like...
Very, like, back then it might have just been seen as sort of sci-fi, but, like, nowadays, you could probably, you know...
There's, like, a lot of depth to it, and there's, you know, that's a real fucking movie, but it wasn't afraid to have its laughs as well, where, like, you know, you have kind of bits like John Connor is basically kind of going, oh, you know, please don't kill anyone, and then, like, the next guys he cross paths with, he just fucking shoots, he decaps the fucking pair of them. And, like, he's like, oh, they'll live. And it's like, ah. So, you know, like, you can have something that is fundamentally quite serious and is trying to tell a story that is meant to be taken seriously. You know,
still inject levity, like, you know?
Yeah, isn't afraid to have a laugh at the same time. And the first Metal Gear is very much that. So when I hear people going on about it, like, oh, it's a zany, goofy franchise. No, it is not. Well, at least the first 3 games aren't. The problem with them as they go on is they started to become a parody of themselves. Which again, we'll get to that.
We keep jumping the gun.
Yeah.
It's very tempting to jump ahead and just scream.
It's so difficult not to go down that road.
We will get there.
Yeah.
And when we do, there is plenty to say.
Yeah, but the content that is available for purchase now on the volume 1 of the HD collection is the gold standard insofar as the Metal Gear. Like, I would say to anyone that the essential viewing or the essential experience for Metal Gear are Metal Gear Solid 1, 2, and 3. If you stop there, you've gotten the best out of the franchise. Like, those 3 games, tonally speaking, are very much to be taken seriously and have a lot to say, are very well fleshed out. Like, the story has a wonderful payoff. The 3rd game is like a prequel that gives added context to the first 2, like, say, in the chronology as far as 1, 2, and 3 are concerned, 2 is the last one in that chronology, and 2 ends on a note. If it just stopped there, it's perfect. It's kind of like, you could say, look,
but
there's more. Yeah, exactly. You could say in much the same way as, like, people kind of go with the end of the movie Inception by Christopher Nolan, at the end of it, where the thing is still spinning. And the question is, oh, was that reality or wasn't it? Like, that doesn't matter. Draw your own conclusions. Make up your own mind. Like, sure, you can go on at infinitum.
People seem to have a problem with ambiguity nowadays. They need constant conclusion to everything.
The best endings with things I find are often ambiguous, where you kind of have
like, if you're still talking about it 10 years later, wondering, it did a good job. I think even for better, for worse in some sense. Like, if you're still thinking about it, still wanting to invest time thinking about it, it succeeded in some sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
But everyone's like, no, I want to know exactly what happened. Oh, there we go. There's my conclusion. Done.
Yeah,
wonderful.
And I'm very tempted now, like, even like when I hear that, I'm very tempted to go into certain kind of aspects of 4. But again, we're staying with 1, and I'm just looking at the runtime now. We're coming up on an hour, and we're still only scratching the surface of the first one. So we should probably contain this podcast to the first game, tackle the second one in a second podcast, third one in another one.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah. So okay, the first game anyway. So where are we with that?
We narratively, it's magnificent. Tonally, graphics wise, it all blends together wonderfully.
Those are kind of broad strokes though, but say we'll kind of try and get into the more of the minutiae about, say, the characters and...
Oh no, yeah, we'll get that on them as well.
Yeah, so look, as the game transpires, it becomes apparent that the antagonist character, Liquid Snake, is in fact your brother. So this is harkening back to the whole Cain and Abel hostile brothers type thing, where when you first meet him, there's a boss fight where you take him on. He's flying a Hind D helicopter. I remember even the dialogue was so unbelievably gripping. Like, he just flies up and he's like, "Oh, there you are," and it's like, there was once upon a time where I could have told you every single word of dialogue like verbatim, but alas, my memory has gone to shit with time. But yeah, so like I'm paraphrasing, but it's like, oh, are you ready to face me now, brother? And it's like, what? Who the hell are you?
Who are you?
Yeah, why are you calling me brother? And he's like, ask the father that you killed. I'll send you to hell to meet him. And like, you've got this, and you're like, holy shit. So it's basically like he's telling you like, okay, I am aware of who you are. I am telling you that I am your brother. Thematically, the first game kind of centers around genetics. And basically like, okay, are we doomed to repeat a certain fate based on our genetics? So you've got this fucking brilliant theme. And like I said, the character of Naomi, she's part of your support crew because she knows all about the genetically enhanced soldiers that are there with the Foxhound unit, the next generation special forces and all that. So you've got all of that kind of stuff. As it transpires, the character of Solid Snake, you find out, is in fact a clone of the character of Big Boss. He's referenced as being your father. And then you find out that no, in fact, you're not like a natural human being. You're a clone. And the other clone is Liquid Snake. And there's a whole kind of thing where Liquid Snake's, his whole thing is like, he is laboring under the belief that like, okay, we were created as clones, but you were created as the superior clone. And any interaction I had with our genetic, what's the word I'm looking?
I got all of your recessive genes.
Yeah, our genetic progenitor, I can't speak, but our genetic father, the guy that we were cloned from, I was the inferior clone who was the guinea pig made to create you, and I hate you for that. And furthermore, I hate you for killing our father because that was something I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And he goes on to say, like, you know, you robbed me of my chance for revenge, basically. So you've got this terribly embittered character who is essentially your clone, the mirror image of yourself, who hates you because of what you are, who you are, hates you because you stole his chance at revenge. So basically his entire motive is like he wants to surpass his father's legacy. Basically it's referred to because, as I said before, Big Boss was he tried to overthrow the world with the use of a Metal Gear and nuclear weapons back in the day, but was thwarted by Solid Snake in the MSX games. So now part of Liquid's motivation is essentially, well, I'm actually going to do what he could not. I'm going to put it off, and I'm going to bend the entire world to my will, and that will be my legacy. And in that way, I will have destroyed my father's legacy, and that will be my revenge. And along the way, I will kill you, the guy who was my supposed, superior clone. And in that way, I will basically have self-actualized myself as being superior in spite of my genes. And you've got this entire kind of a dichotomy between the two characters where Snake is just like, all I want is a quiet life. And then Liquid's coming back at you, basically kind of going, no, that's not what you want. You're a fucking killer. You have done nothing but murder people since we got here. It's what you are. It's what you were created to be. Big Boss was cloned because he was the greatest soldier to have ever lived. And you are that. Like, whether you like it or not.
So there's one thing I love there now that's kind of like, that repeats through the series, is that the villain always kind of undermines the conviction of the protagonist. Yeah. Constantly puts them on trial. It's like, you don't even know what you want.
Yeah, that's it. Like, you're laboring under this illusion that you're just a man. It's like, but you're not a man. Like, you're a weapon. You were created because one man possessed like superior abilities for, like murdering other human beings. He was unbelievably proficient at that. That's why you were created. That's why you were brought into existence. And, because of that, you think that you've got some free will in this. And you've got that whole free will debate in it too, where it's basically like...
That's a big kind of factor, yeah.
Yeah, it's like you think you can... He basically says to him at one point, we have no past, we have no future. We're like, we're not men. were shadows in the shapes of men, basically. And he's like, Snake's like, it's like, I have a name. And it's like, no, it's like, no, you don't at all.
Yeah.
We're just fucking shadows of our father. We were created to be that. Fucking, you've got this entire thing about genetic legacy, and it's just such, like, as you get older, that's the thing that I found was, like, unbelievably beautiful about it. Like, the game became more and more poignant as I got older, because there's something that
I'd imagine it'd boggle the young mind.
Yeah, like, a lot of it you couldn't really grasp, but it was something that, like, I come back to it almost on a yearly basis and go through at least the first 3 again. But say, as you get older and you start to kind of realize, you know, like, every kind of rebellious kind of a teen always kind of looks at their parents and are like, fuck you, I'll never turn out to be like you. But as time goes on, you start to see that you don't really have a say in that. There's characteristics that are akin to that of your parents, and they'll break out in you without your say-so, without your input, without any agency, and you'll go, oh shit, and you'll come to realise, fuck, I'm just a genetic echo of my parents. And the theme of this game kind of plays on that too, and it's like, okay, can we acknowledge that? Can we choose to go a different path? And, like, the game doesn't outright tell you good, bad, or indifferent, like, yes or no. And, you know, that's kind of...
As it should, yeah.
Yeah, that's the difference between good writing and bad writing. Like, if something told you outright, yes, no, whatever, that's almost propaganda. That's someone basically drip feeding you their own opinion. Where something asks a question, leaves it hang there, doesn't give you a definitive answer.
Not to bring up the Marvel universe again, but, like, as a point on that, they had the kind of archetype of Thanos?
Yeah.
Where he's like, yeah, look, there's a genuine problem here that's quite ubiquitous across the universe, which is, like, overpopulation.
Yeah.
Resources will dry up. This is what's going to happen. Look at my planet. Living proof.
Yeah.
They're all like, no. It's like, okay, but what's your counter argument? What's even a solution to that? No.
It's like,
like, I got it. You can't just bring up that's like a genuine kind of issue and then just kind of go, well, don't think about it too hard.
Yeah,
look.
It's kind of like, you know, kind of saying, oh, look, here's global warming. What are we going to do about it? And it's like, no, we're not going to do anything about it because I don't.
We'll sort it out in phase 4 or something, whatever.
Yeah, that's it. But
put another Loki season 3 or something.
Yeah, that's it. Just fucking...
Anyway, rolling off of Marvel, come back to Metal Gear, yeah. But, like, going off of that as well, like, whole kind of genetics thing, it certainly hits home as you are getting older.
Yeah.
And especially, say, if you don't have, like, don't get along well with certain parental figures.
Yeah, like, many a person has, you know, fucking no small amount of issues with their parents, or at least people in their family, maybe siblings, like, as is the case. You might have your own liquid snake in the form of a sibling of yours, or who knows, but you've got this genetic bond to them that you can never shake. Like, what that person does or doesn't do is going to have more influence on you than, like, say, someone that you're not, say, genetically tied to. Like, you know, you mightn't like someone or something like that, but there's always some kind of a thing. You'll never be able to shake it. Even if you don't put in or out with them, you'll always have some part of you that's always pondering their fucking existence. You can't ever really just kind of blot that out. Like I said, you mightn't get on with them, you mightn't fucking like them, but it's kind of like I've known people who went their entire lives like hating maybe a parent or a sibling, but then maybe something happens and maybe that sibling dies or something like that, and regardless of the fact that, you know, they didn't like them or didn't get on to them, they're deeply affected by it. So there's something like subconscious and very primal, a connection that, like, it doesn't matter whether you like them or you don't, but the fact that you know that someone bearing your fucking genes has just passed away, that's the thing, will affect you.
Liquid mentions the selfish gene theory.
The selfish gene, yes.
That's it. Whereas, like, you go out your way to kind of save a sibling simply just so it's, you know, your genetic material will carry on.
Yes. And basically, like, what the whole kind of plot point of, say, their motivation, like asking for the remains of Big Boss as part of their motive, is basically because Liquid Snake knows that the Special Forces unit, they were artificially injected with some of Big Boss's genes to make them more proficient soldiers, but they are now suffering the ramifications of that. There's flaws and they're developing all kinds of issues as a result. He also knows that by virtue of being a clone, he is at some point in time going to start to degrade. So he wants the remains of Big Boss so that they might be able to resolve those issues. And he states that he feels compelled to try and save the genome soldiers, as they're called in the game. And, he basically says that his genes compel him to do it. And he's very much of the mind that I am compelled to do this. My genes are telling me this is what I need to do. And I'm not going to fight them. I'm going to go along with it. Which is it's almost a little bit contradictory when you kind of juxtapose that with his desire to kill Snake. But that's just, maybe you could say that, it's a contradiction, or you could say it's just another layer of depth to the character, because, okay, look, he's got his motivation and he has his whole thing where, like, I want to murder that cunt because I want to self-actualize my own fucking ego, because I want to prove to myself that I am in fact the superior clone, despite the fact I've been told my entire life. The funny thing is, a great little thing that it plays at the end of it is, you hear when you finish the game, there's a dialogue sequence at the end from one of the other characters, one of the surviving characters, Revolver Ocelot, who could have his own fucking podcast episode here. But he's basically...
I love that bastard so much.
Yeah.
I absolutely am heartbroken what they did to him in 5.
In 5, oh Jesus Christ!
But we get to that. We'll cross that bridge. We'll get to that. We'll cross that bridge.
We'll get to that at some point. But this character, he's basically like a triple agent type character, and he's unbelievably fucking cool. He's this fucking.
Oh, I think he's might be my favorite character.
Yeah, he's got
to a certain point anyway.
He's got this Western motif. He's a fucking cowboy gunslinger, but he also has these ties to Russia, and he longs to make Russia great again, essentially, or at least this is what the character is telling you. But at the end of the game, he's the only surviving boss character, and he's having a conversation with a mystery character on the end of the phone who turns out to be the president of the United States, because there's more going on than meets the eye, because of course there is. But during that dialogue, he reveals the fact that Liquid was labouring under the belief that he was the inferior clone and trying to prove that he was the better one and that he would come out on top and he would prevail at the end of it all. But he was actually fed lies. And the truth of the matter was, the inferior clone was Solid Snake, and he never knew. But he never laboured under the belief that he was the inferior one. So it throws this ambiguity up into the mix, where it's like, okay, so the inferior clone actually won, despite the fact that, if genes were this solid thing that meant, like, okay, you are objectively the better one, well then Liquid should have won, but Liquid believed himself to be inferior. Is that why he failed? Or, it just kind of, it's like...
If it leaves you questioning it and pondering it,
yeah,
it did a good job.
So it's like, why did Solid Snake win if he wasn't the genetically superior clone, as Liquid believed throughout the entire game? And it's brilliant, like, because it leaves everything open to question. You can draw your own conclusions. There's no definitive answer necessarily. Is it a nature versus nurture thing? Is it Snake's experiences that made him superior? Was it what way his life and his own particular set of experiences shaped him? And all of this meaty subject matter in a game from 1998. And, imagine a 10-year-old playing this, who up until that point has been fucking smashing boxes in Crash Bandicoot and trying to collect the gems for some arbitrary fucking reason. Like, Christ above. I can't gush about the first game enough. And it irks me any time I hear people saying, they're just these goofy, silly games, You're like, there's one guy, he's got psychic powers.
They're more than that.
Fuck off. Like, they're...
Yeah.
Even with that character, like, when you beat him in a boss fight, you've that that whole infamous, famous kind of thing where like the way to defeat him in combat was switching the controller from controller port 1 to controller port 2, another fourth wall break.
Yeah, I played that. I was like, oh, you were telling me about the save file thing. He's like, you know, like you have so-and-so Konami games. And I was let off in the boss fight then. And I was like swinging at him, not landing a hit. And I was looking over at you and I was like, what's going on here? And you were like smiling away, like, go on, guess what you have to do? And I was going around shooting, wasting ammo, baiting, and then died. And I was looking and just like, all right, what's going on here? Why can't I beat him?
Here's a funny thing about my experience with the game the first time. It is possible to beat him without changing the controller.
That's what we had to do because we were using an emulator. Do you remember?
Is that what happened?
Yeah, because you were like, you have to plug in a second controller, and we both looked down at the computer and we're like, wait, how are we supposed to do that?
Yeah, to get into pure nerd territory. Say, if you lose the boss fight, I'm not sure if it's once or
I think it's twice.
Something like that. There is an option. There's 2 statues in the room, and you can take them out. And for whatever reason, I don't know, does it give you context?
No, Campbell messaged you first saying something about putting in a second controller. Yeah. And then when you die again, he says, maybe there's a reason you can't do that. Which, like, the game thinking ahead like that is like, maybe this poor young fella he's only got the one controller. We'll cut him some slack.
It's baked into the game that maybe the second controller port is broken or something, or there's some reason that you can't. So there was an alternate method. You could take these 2 statues in the room. Just
to kind of roll back there, like any other game, you get a game over, you lose, you go back a checkpoint. It's the same thing again. Like even something as young as that now in 1998, to lose to a boss fight and get additional dialogue on top of that, explaining why you've lost, and like another one on top of that. Just be like, here's a solution.
I'm hanging for a piss. Ben,
so am I.
Carry the podcast.
Oh no. Oh Lord above. Anyway, look. Like I said, I came into the series pretty late. Jesus, 2 or 3 years ago. And my goodness. It really kind of blew me away anyway to miss kind of all that. Especially if you were like a young lad growing up with it. Like, it's an interesting perspective to come along being a full-grown adult experiencing it. And still liking it. Like all the people talking about how dated it is and so forth, I'd imagine might go on a limb and say it's a sense of contrarianism. It's like, here's a popular IP, a lot of people like it. I'm going to be away from the crowd here. Look at me, I'm so special. Here's my own little opinion about it. It's like, look, whatever. But like you said, like Metal Gear 1 hits all cylinders narratively, characters, atmosphere. The cold environment of the Alaska is brilliant. And the PS1 graphics, I think, lends itself magnificently. Oh, hang on now. Did you have a successful piss?
I most certainly did.
Yeah. I don't think I could do well on a solo cast.
Well, I put you on the spot there now, in fairness.
Well, you see, I have to go for a slash now as well.
Okay, what were you saying? And I'll pick up from there.
I was just saying how I experienced it, like as a full-grown adult, and you experienced it as a wee lad. So, like, there's 2 interesting perspectives there to have, where you have a full-grown adult experiencing and then a child.
Yeah.
Continue.
Yeah, okay. So, I'm just going to ramble on there now because I don't do particularly well by myself on podcasts because I go off on tangents and end up missing the point completely. So, yeah, bear with me. In any case, the first Metal Gear game is like, it is one of the great works of art, and I think it single-handedly ends the debate. Are video games art? They absolutely are. Like, insofar as a medium for delivering character and narrative, like, you couldn't have pulled off the same thing with a movie or even a book, I dare say, because, you know, you are the active participant in the entire thing, and you can elect throughout this particular game to call any one of the supporting characters for added context on the entire world and flesh out, like, there's many things, many different terms and little things unique to the universe that the game references constantly. And, you know, at any given point, you're free to make a call and these characters flesh it out for you. That's something unique to the medium of video games that you couldn't get anywhere else.
I'm back.
So, good man yourself. But how did your lash go?
It was great.
Yeah.
I wish you were there.
Next time.
Yeah, but I just don't want to interject here, but just something came to mind as well is the fact that there's kind of 2 different endings to the game as well. One of which I will accept canonically.
Yes.
Which is, like I said, spoilers ahead, Meryl dies.
Yeah, there's a point in the game where the character of Revolver Ocelot has you tied to like a torture bed where you are being electroshocked. And it was something that I had great difficulty with when I was a young fella, because there's a button mashing sequence that comes up, which basically is you resisting the electroshocks and trying to survive. And the character of Revolver Ocelot says to you, if you submit to the torture, you're free to go, I'll stop torturing you, and you're grand. But if you do it, the girl's life is mine. Basically, I will kill Meryl, because at this point in time in the game, both of you are being held captive. You're captured at one point. We've there's so much kind of stuff now we kind of left out, but this...
I don't think anyone wants to listen to a 5-hour podcast of Metal Gear 1 is the thing. There's so much to cover, but like, Jesus almighty. To summarize in one go, it's impossible. It's too much to know about it.
Yeah, there's just so much going on in it, but like, even like, there's a scene where, say, preceding the capture of Snake and the character of Meryl, Meryl gets shot by Sniper Wolf, and there's like a scene, and it is an incredibly emotional scene where she's basically like saying to Snake, I'm just a liability, because she's shot, she's on the floor, and she's aware of the fact that the character Sniper Wolf is using her as bait to lure Snake out. And she's basically saying, oh, Snake, shoot me, and she's basically saying, I was just a daft kid who wanted to live up to my hero, and I wanted to be close to who she believes was, her father, and, his legacy as a soldier. Her father was a soldier, as I said before. She came from a military background, and she's just like, oh, shoot me, Snake. And he's like, oh, quiet down, save your strength. And there's this very fucking, like, I remember it being really tough to watch, because I wasn't, as a 10-year-old, I wasn't, the desensitized human being that life renders you eventually, because, you see and you consume so much media and so much ideas, and you see how harsh the world is. When, the more you live, the more you see it, basically.
You're unspoiled.
Yeah, essentially. And at that age, just like experiencing all of that, again, I keep coming back to this, but it irks me to no fucking end when I hear people.
I know exactly.
Oh, they're just goofy, silly games. It's like, fuck out of here. No, they are fucking not. At least the first 3 aren't. The first 3 games take themselves very seriously, but beyond that point, I will say they do become a parody of themselves. And again, risking putting the horse before the cart here. That was a kind of a thing that I think is referenced a lot with regards to Metal Gear Solid 4, where it's like, oh, Kojima, he was aware of the fact that this went on too long, it would start to become a bit silly and all this kind of thing. It's like, fuck off. That's just a fucking,
If you start on getting Metal Gear 4 now, you're going to set me off, so we have to roll it back.
Yeah.
I can't
no,
contain
you're
my...
dead right. You're dead right.
My rage.
That will be its own fucking podcast.
3 hours.
I'm going to put a fine point in it and I'm going to move on. Metal Gear Solid 4 is shit.
Dog shit. It's the worst of the series.
It is objectively fucking terrible.
It's the worst.
Yeah, like, it has some great moments.
Oh, here... No. I can't.
Yeah, okay.
Because it'll be like 2 hours of ranting on my end and that.
We'll stop. We'll get to it. The first 3 Metal Gear games are absolutely fucking fantastic. And if anyone hasn't played them and is listening to this podcast, well, the first one's after getting spoiled to absolute bits for you. But in any case, go back and play them. Or if maybe you played them when you were younger and you don't quite remember them, go back and play them again. And, let's change this narrative around them where, people are going to go, oh, they're silly, goofy games. No, they are not. They are...
Still have massive depth to them, even to this day.
Unbelievable depth. The second one, arguably more so. The second one, like, there's a YouTuber, he's one of my favorite YouTubers going, like, and I'm very fucking particular about, people that I actually follow on YouTube. Like, most of my time spent on YouTube is just throw on some crap in the background just for ambient noise while I'm doing something else. But in terms of actual videos that I look at, there's a YouTuber called Max Dorat, and I think I might be mispronouncing his name now, but look up his channel if you haven't seen it already. But I think his claim to fame, the video that propelled him into notoriety, was a video all about Metal Gear Solid 2 and how it was, you know, I think the video is called The Most Profound Moment in Video Games, and he makes a very, very good case, and he is much more articulate than I, and he, you know, the depth he goes into with regards to, say, the significance of some of the ideas that are put forth in Metal Gear Solid 2, I couldn't imitate it even. They're absolutely fantastic. But again, we're jumping the gun. We're talking about Metal Gear Solid 2 now. We're just going to try and contain this.
Roll back to one. So when he was saying there, like, I didn't find out till long after playing the first one, that there was even that Meryl could die. Because the interrogation scene...
Oh, the multiple endings, yeah.
It was just like a button mashing thing, which I was not even close to failing. You saw that.
Yeah, you hammered it. I had unbelievable difficulty with that when I was a young fella. There was actually one of my cousins, and he was fucking savage at it, and I actually had to get him to do it originally. But this is a method that I figured out to actually get past it. My thumbs just don't allow me to do those button mashing bits. Whatever is the story. Yeah, that's probably another. But the method that I figured out how to do it was, it's the circle button that you have to mash to withstand the electric shocks. But if you get a pencil or a pen, whatever you have handy, and you put it to one side of the circle button and you just cross it back and forth, you can fly back and forth over the circle button and you'll fucking blaze through it. But I didn't figure that out until many attempts at it. But, you know, so the first ending sequence that I seen for the game was the one where Meryl died. And that sequence where at the end of the game you find Meryl's body.
Oh, it's fantastic, man. I had to look it up on YouTube, and like,
it's fucking heart-wrenching. Snake is basically, because Snake has been saying, like, fucking throughout the game, oh, I'm nothing but a fucking murderer and all this shit. And then, like, he is holding this young woman who has died because he essentially fucking sold her out to save his own skin. And he's basically like, I'm not the hero you thought I was. I'm a loser. I'm a loser. I'm nothing. And it's like, oh my God, it ripped me to bits. And like, again, like I said,
I accept that as the canonical ending.
Yeah.
And we'll get to that when we get to it.
Yeah, but, that's it. Because Metal Gear 2, when that picks up, it's ambiguous. It doesn't tell you outright what was the correct ending. You don't get to that until Metal Gear 4. Metal Gear 4 takes a hard stance on which ending is canonical. But up until, you know, so look, whatever way, I said, the gold standard for me are 1, 2, and 3. And beyond that point, it could be either way, because, you know, 3 is a prequel. So as far as the chronology is concerned, Meryl could well be dead. And to me, that was the more emotionally...
It's way better, as far as I'm concerned.
It was a more emotionally resonant kind of a capping off of the story. And it... Yeah, again, when I hear people talk about these games, like they're goofy, silly things, it just pisses me off to no end. But anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like, yeah. Like I said, like, I did that scene. The ending I got the first time I played it was the Meryl ending. You know, very happy, dappy, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So then when I learned after the fact that the ending, there's an alternate ending where she dies, and after seeing the scene, I felt a bit robbed. I was kind of like, oh, I could have had that. Shit.
Yeah, that's it. And fun fact, like, when you complete the game with having gotten both endings, the Meryl dies and the Meryl lives ending, you can restart the game again, and you will now have a tuxedo, and the cyborg ninja will appear in a different color scheme. So you and the cyborg ninja are both altered, but that's neither here nor there. Those are kind of Easter eggs, kind of thing.
And there's plenty of those.
There is plenty of those.
God.
Like, on every single fucking level, the game just hits and knocks it out of the fucking park. And it is and I dare say will always be my favourite video game, bar none, for that reason. Like, you know, like I could gush all about 2 and gush all about 3 as well. I adore 1, 2, and 3. Absolutely adore them. By the time we eventually get to Metal Gear 4, you'll be hearing a very different tone.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's it. But look, again, we're going to try and stay off of that for now. But for the most part, I think we've covered the broad strokes of the original Metal Gear. Like we both acknowledged that you couldn't possibly do it justice with one podcast.
God, no.
There's just so much to unpack there. But yeah, a seminal fucking work of art. Absolutely fucking fantastic. If you haven't fucking played it, for Christ's sake, play it. If you played it way back when, you don't remember it, go back, do yourself a favour, play it again. Fucking 10 out of 10, in my opinion, a flawless game.
There you go. My goodness.
Aye.
There's a review for you.
There's a fucking review. Like, a lot of people fucking, a lot of close friends of mine, they give me shit about being like fucking a very harsh critic, and I am. I absolutely fucking am. I'm very difficult to please, and I'm a contrary bastard. But when it comes to the stuff that I do love, such as this game, I will fucking gush about it for days. So, you know, and this is probably my favourite piece of media, my favourite video game, certainly. So, you know,
I'm sure your listeners are ecstatic to hear you gush over something you genuinely like.
Something I genuinely like. Like, you know, Metal Gear is kind of when I often find myself asking the question, is life worth living? You know, one of the things that kind of tips the scales in the favour of, yes, it is having experienced the original Metal Gear Solid. Like, I fucking can't praise it enough.
Nobody can take that away from you.
No.
That's the beautiful thing about it.
No, not even fucking Hideo Kojima, the megalomaniacal arsehole. But as I said, we'll get to that. Separating the art from the artist and all the rest.
Going off that as well, like, coming into the series late, I only kind of got whispers of Kojima. So I didn't know a whole lot about him. So your opinion kind of definitely influenced mine. But like I said, like, I definitely concur in a lot of regard as well, you know, separate the artist from his work and all that.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
What a self-indulgent bastard.
Yeah.
What a dirty boy.
And it becomes very, very apparent as it goes on. But look, we're once again in danger of fucking going off topic.
It's just so tempting to just jump straight onto it, because like that alone, I'll scream it up for 3 hours.
But look, just to stay on the whole positive,
positive vibes.
The whole positive thing. Like, the man is the creator of one of my favorite pieces of media. So, regardless of what I think about him, aside from that, I have to hold my hand up and say I'm eternally grateful that he does what he does and that he did what he did. Because, you know, my life would have certainly been different had I not experienced that game at such a influential age, I suppose. It got me thinking. Up until that point, I wasn't really thinking in the same way, and that was the thing that kind of that catalyzed my propensity for questioning things and falling in love with ideas and philosophy and kind of ambiguous questions that there's no fucking answer to. But maybe I would have been better off if I just liked the match like so many other fellas that I was brought up with. And
Did you see what happened earlier? They had the ball, right?
They had the ball.
And then they threw it.
Yeah.
It was great.
It went into a net at some point in time, and there was much rejoice, and so on and so forth.
Excellent.
But yeah. So look, fucking, like I said, we could be here for the night now if we try and unpack every kind of thing. But I think for the first Metal Gear podcast, I think it's a solid enough attempt. I think so, yeah. Look, we'll wrap it up there on that. The HD Collection podcast. Aye, HD Collection, load of bollocks. If you can root out old hardware, fucking play it that way. If you have an Xbox console, you can get your hands on the 2011 release. Or if you have a fucking PC and you can emulate, do that. But say that new HD collection, it's just fuckery from Konami, because Konami owned the rights to the franchise, and they could have very easily put in a bit of fucking effort and made, you know, kind of brought them up to standard for modern hardware. But the fact that on even the Switch, like 20-year-old games run like shit on the Switch, like the Switch is a far more powerful console than the original, or sorry, than the PlayStation 2. The original release of Metal Gear Solid 2 ran at 60 frames a second on the PS2, and for whatever fucking reason, I think it even struggles to maintain 30 frames on the Switch, and that is just unacceptable. So I wouldn't encourage anyone to buy it, but if you have no other option, experience Metal Gear, because it is fucking fantastic. There's nothing like it.
It's great, lads.
And it's like, look, I criticize Kojima, but there hasn't been anything like it before or since. So whatever he is or whatever he isn't, he did deliver us one of the greatest works of fucking art
You're a bastard
to have ever existed. A victim of his own success, perhaps. A victim of his own ego,
perhaps.
Definitely. But look, we'll wrap it up there, and I would like to thank my dear friend Ben for accompanying me on this journey where the pair of us, well, I'll only speak for myself here, where I'll talk out my arse about something that I love. And thanks, Ben, for enabling me to do that.
Of course.
I can't.
I know how much you love the game. You have to get it out there.
Yep. So for any fucker that thinks, I just criticize everything all the time, and, there you go. Here's something that I've gushed about for an hour and a half, and we'll continue this with Metal Gear 2 and Metal Gear 3. So if you enjoyed this, stay tuned, and if you didn't, well,
fuck off.
Fuck off. Sound and good luck.
Bye.